It doesn't get any better than this. Both of our Masters finalists taking to the stage and getting ready for one of the most intense battles of their life to claim that title of world champion.
I am so excited. It's been a battle of the Koraidons here, and these teams, they actually function very differently. Two big tools I think that you should pay attention to in this matchup are going to be the Raging Bolt and the actual Brute Bonnet, which you wouldn't expect to be super strong in an opposing Sun matchup, but Brute Bonnet with that Water Terra can be super good defensively to get a Spore off. Look at the Flutter Mane, look at the Chi-Yu. These are Pokemon that are really frail. Thunderclap can actually do so much damage to a Flutter Mane that doesn't have Bulk when you have that Photosynthesis Sun boost. Similarly, Sucker Punch from Brute Bonnet will allow you to do a lot as well.
Let's get ready to go. This is a best of 3 for all the marbles. The World Championship title on the line. Make some noise as we get into game number 1.
Oh, wow. Okay, in a restricted format, there's actually no restricteds to hit the field to start the game.
That is wild. We are going to see Gio have that Flutter Mane next to that Choice Scarf Chi-Yu.
Slowing down the pressure that you want to apply.
Well, there aren't going to be any swaps. It's just a terrestrialization to start off our first game, and it is the Brute Bonnet as a James terrestrialization Pokemon of choice in game number 1. Brute Bonnet, the Water Terra, as you called out, such a nice defensive typing to have, not even just against those fire types from this Chi-Yu and Koraidon, but of course, because of that Flutter Mane. As you see the Incineroar go for the fake out, it's going to stop the Chi-Yu in its tracks for this turn, but the Moonblast still does a lot for its troubles, though. This Brute Bonnet is able to land a Spore into the Chi-Yu, one of the biggest offensive pieces here for Gio, stopping his Chi-Yu for just a short while. And Gio doesn't want to take the risk, actually decides to put the Flutter Mane back in its Pokeball for later and brings out a Brute Bonnet of his own, maybe suspecting that a Spore would be going into that Flutter Mane's way. It's also going to get past this Sucker Punch, and that's going to fail as this Chi-Yu does take a turn of sleep.
So the Brute Bonnet is in the back. There is an answer to the sleep here, and you've actually gotten enough damage onto the opposing Brute Bonnet, right? And so both players have had so much preparation time. Chi-Yu is going to stay asleep here.
Another turn here for James to take advantage of as the Brute Bonnet does go for the Spore. In case that Chi-Yu had woken up on this turn, we do have the knockoff into Gio's Brute Bonnet, which will knock off the Citrus Berry as Brute Bonnet fires off a Spore of its own, putting this Incineroar to sleep.
It has been such a defensive game to start, like down that Brute Bonnet. So we're going to see another switch from Giovanni.
Gio now removing the Brute Bonnet and deciding to switch the Koraidon in its place. So all 4 Pokemon for Gio in this game number 1 have been revealed. But notably, this Koraidon is going to be setting the sun and giving a Photosynthesis boost over to James's own Brute Bonnet. But what about the sun is setting itself up for this Chi-Yu as we see Incineroar, the first to move here, taking its turn of sleep. Sucker Punch into the Chi-Yu, so you know it might be able to go for an attack on this turn, but it stays asleep. Another critical turn of sleep here for James. What if Gio calls that and actually decides to go after an attack onto this Brute Bonnet instead? Incineroar wakes up and goes for Helping Hand onto the Brute Bonnet, and that's one way that you can make sure this Incineroar does something on this turn. The Sucker Punch into the Chi-Yu, that was enough damage to get the knockout, and so Gio is not able to utilize this Chi-Yu at all in this game number 1.
Yeah, Sucker Punch itself won't get the knockout. You see Flame Charge come out as well. I think part of what Gio's thinking is, I want that speed boost, and I think you're probably going to switch Incineroar out, but it's an incredible turn for James there as he manages to get the wake up that gives him the extra damage that he needs to get the knockout onto Chi-Yu. And so I think that was what looked like a really scary position for James, ends up being much more positive.
Well, at least you have the free switch into your own Brute Bonnet that's also going to be getting that Photosynthesis defense boost. Know how perilous these next couple of turns can be. And James wants to save this Brute Bonnet for just a little bit later. The Shadow Runner Calyrex now going to be the Pokemon that hits the field. The first restricted Pokemon revealed for James in this first game.
And the question is, did the fighting type attack go into that side? Close combat goes into Calyrex. That's the play I was talking about the previous turn. And James now gets the parting shot off. Oh my goodness, he's going to be able to pivot out a little bit more. Brute Bonnet, of course, still has the ability to go for a Spore, can put something to sleep, but it's a beautiful baiting holes. It's Brute Bonnet coming out from the opposing end. Of course, it's Water Terra, so let's see. Where does Gio's Brute Bonnet target?
Okay, well, after the Photosynthesis boost, we get to find out our answer, and it is just the Brute Bonnet that James switches in that will take that. Still not a horrible trade to have made there.
And the Calyrex with the double up right now. We're going to see a Terra come out.
feels like it has to be that Koraidon to go Terra Fire. You don't want to be super vulnerable to any of those extra attacks coming through later, but for now, it's also going to help you boost up your fire type attacks in the sun, whether it's the Flame Charge or that Flare Blitz. But Calyrex knows it has the pressure of a Sucker Punch from this Brute Bonnet, but we'll see James's Brute Bonnet also take its first turn of sleep.
Exactly, and it is the close combat. It's not a fire type attack into Calyrex, but this now gives James a free switch in. Do you actually want to give him that free switch in right now? That's scary. The other thing to note, Koraidon now takes Life Orb damage. You've dropped your special defense. Calyrex, of course, can apply a lot of pressure with damage with an Astral Barrage, right? And so Brute Bonnet is not going to get the Spore off. James is willing to trade his defensive pieces, and he's looking to position his offense right now.
This Koraidon, you can play a bit more predictably that way, but it is going to be the Koraidon. So the fourth and final for James now, also revealed in here. Both restricteds for him have hit the field. A tough call to make. Koraidon now going to switch out, wants to also try to cleanse those special defense drops, as Fluttermane is going to be the Pokemon that takes its place. Super risky when you're staring down the barrel of an Astral Barrage, but knowing if you can hold on with this Focus Sash at the end of the day, then you will be able to help yourself out with that speed boost. And good thing for this Fluttermane, it's the Shadow Rider Calyrex. It also decides to take a reprieve.
So much defensive play from both ends. There was a lot of offense being exerted. It's going to be the Sucker Punch. There was the ability to, of course, go for a Spore, but trying to get damage there. And Collision Course, it's a fantastic turn for James here. It's going to deal super effective damage into the Brute Bonnet and get a one-hit knockout.
No way. Another Pokemon down, and only two more to go here for James to close out this first game. And Gio at least has timed it so that you can bring this Koraidon out when the sun has freshly expired, but you're also going to still be giving that sun over to the opposing Koraidon.
Now you have positioned yourself where you have Fluttermane and Koraidon. There's no more Terra available, so you can just go Moonblast into Koraidon, close combat, instantly Incineroar. So then the response, obviously, being concerned on the Ghost types is such a big deal here. So here we go. It's actually a pivot immediately into a Shadow Rider, saying you might just go for a Protect with your Pokemon right now.
If it is a Protect, maybe Gio is able to try to read one step ahead and go for a Flare Blitz into that slot instead. That would do major damage to that Calyrex. But the Moonblast first, there's no Protect. The Koraidon gets knocked out in one hit, and just like that, Gio is evened up the Pokemon count.
Oh, that's a really greedy play there. And Flame Charge as well. All it takes is one key turn, and that's what Gio gets. Of course, Focus Sash keeps Calyrex around for another turn, but this game, I think, is about to end.
Two speed boost now onto this Koraidon, another speed boost onto this Fluttermane because of that Photosynthesis. And even though the Incineroar comes back out onto the field, you can only fake out the Koraidon. This Fluttermane is still free and clear.
I just don't see a way for him to win this one.
There's still a will, and sometimes that means there is still a way, but James is going to go ahead and take this turn to protect the Calyrex and at least give himself some time to think heading into the next game. Incineroar is the next to fall with a big close combat from this Koraidon. Another one-hit knockout for Gio, and it's just the Shadow Rider Calyrex that stands tall to try to get James a victory here.
Oh my goodness. I mean, if you look at this game, the key turn really was that double KO, or KO plus 1 HP, almost a KO. Calyrex basically is fainted, right? So I think Shadow Rider's just really awkward here to use as Fluttermane, secures the knockout, and Gio goes up one game.
Gets underway for the grand finals of the Pokemon World Championships. And for Gio, he is confident in his Game 1 game plan, decides to go for that Fluttermane and Chi-Yu again, as well as James Evans running back this Incineroar and Brute Bonnet combo.
So let's see if any Terras come out. No Terras, no fake outs.
It's just going to be a Sucker Punch right into the Fluttermane as the Brute Bonnet is going to take the Dark Pulse, as though there is a bit of a trade of damage, but as the Fluttermane follows up, the Brute Bonnet just goes down with a double up here from Gio, and James has lost his first Pokemon in this second game. Incineroar still gets a chance to move and decides to go for the knockoff, so that will remove the Choice Scarf of this Chi-Yu and at least make it a little bit less speedy.
Terra, but you can see Gio was predicting the Water Terra, so he went for that Dark Pulse. So both players really just trying to get into each other's heads. Of course, the Calyrex Shadow Rider now hits the field.
To see from this team.
And here is going to be a switch. I think you also could just go in and Brute Bonnet if you brought it, because there's not that much threatening it with offense, and so there it is.
Brute Bonnet now, at least this Flutter main can go back into its Pokeball and come back out later. As we saw Gio in that first game preserve it, and ended up being a key piece to that success. Protect on this Calyrex Shadow as Gio, without that Choice Scarf intact, can actually switch up this move as well. This is another way that you can utilize this Chi-Yu with those snarls. You would have loved to be able to land that into the Calyrex Shadow and also drop its special attack, but you'll also take some chip.
I think the Calyrex just is so awkwardly positioned right now, right? You're up against two Dark-type Pokemon, and you just, like, don't have that much offense. You can't really use Psychic, obviously, and so you're relegated to Astral Barrage. Astral Barrage just isn't that strong, right? I was like, well, the only way you can get the knockdown is if you, like, commit Ghost Terra and Helping Hand. That's just so many resources.
It's a lot of resources, and now when you see this Koraidon hit the field, I think the problem becomes even more compounded.
Terra makes a lot of sense. I would expect it to be on the Brute Bonnet. And it's going to be on Koraidon to start.
Yeah, Koraidon first, and then we'll see if Gio has decided to respond to that with a terrestrialization of his own. But this Koraidon now uniquely positioned to be able to at least get some more damage down, hopefully, before it does get put to sleep by this Brute Bonnet. But Gio does go for that water terrestrialization, so a great Terra here, but both of them, you know they're going for the gold now. With both of these terrestrializations expended, a lot is going to come down to the rest of this turn. That Brute Bonnet is no longer a Dark type, and as this Astral Barrage gets fired out, this Brute Bonnet actually takes about 70% damage.
Flame Charge!
The Flame Charge is going to give this Koraidon a boost, but as it goes into the Chi-Yu, it actually gets a knockout.
It gets the knockout, but Brute Bonnet survives the turn there. I was thinking, well, if you just double up until a Brute Bonnet slot, can you get the knockout with Astral Barrage and Collision Course? This is now a Spore coming out, and it's going to go out into the Shadow Rider, now putting it to sleep and putting it in a really difficult position. In terms of damage, it's going to be Koraidon coming out now from Gio's end. This Koraidon, of course, is really powerful. It should not get the one-hit knockout, though, onto the opposing Koraidon to watch, but Koraidon does go for the Protect, like I suggested, trying to just take that first turn.
But if Gio has opted into going for damage onto that Shadow Rider Calyrex instead, this could get dicey very quickly.
Oh,
Gio, though, actually goes for the close combat into the Shadow Rider Calyrex, maybe expecting a switch-in, something like that Incineroar would have been knocked out or put to sleep.
And that would be a disaster, so here we go. Collision Course.
Collision Course heading right into that Koraidon's way instead, bringing it down to about 70% of its HP.
Asleep.
And Shadow Rider Calyrex just cannot wake up. It is sleeping at the wheel as it has to take a Flame Charge. Its Focus Sash gets broken, and now it's Gio's Koraidon that gets a chance to get a speed boost and now start to bypass the speed advantage that James's Koraidon had. Brute Bonnet follows it up with a sleep, and this is a huge turn for Gio. It's hard to make that call to go for the close combat, though, when you know that one of the drawbacks is going to be dropping your special defense and defense, but the Shadow Rider Calyrex does wake up. It just goes for a Protect, decides to play it just a little safe, as now we will see Giovanni go for that close combat into the opposing Koraidon. It's so much damage, but there needs to be a bit more to follow it up, so maybe this Brute Bonnet is able to do just that. It does have access to that Seed Bomb, but decides to go for the Spore instead into the opposing Shadow Rider.
And that was a really safe play, right? Basically, close combat into the Koraidon, just fell asleep. I get a ton of damage off, at least get a wake up with that Koraidon, but this turn could be huge. Gio, at any point, it feels like he could just win Worlds.
So the Shadow Rider Calyrex is going to go away, hoping to maybe bypass something like a Sucker Punch, or maybe even be able to, well, look at that. Unnerve actually getting off the field means that this Brute Bonnet can actually get a bit of HP recovery thanks to the Citrus Berry that it was holding. As the
James wakes up! It wakes up!
James actually is able to go for the Protect on the Koraidon. That's a huge wake up to at least keep James in this second game. But the Brute Bonnet did go for the Sucker Punch, probably into the Shadow Rider Calyrex slot that the Incineroar came into, and the close paw combat now getting targeted into the Koraidon. Bonnet does have Sucker Punch that you can throw into the opposing Koraidon, and Gio says, I'm not going to opt into that variance. I am just going to go for the Protect onto my own Koraidon, but that means that this Brute Bonnet is going to be eating that Fake Out. Flame Charge, though, unfortunately from James, goes for the Protect, so you're not going to be able to get that speed advantage there either. In his arsenal to give himself another turn, but Gio is going to actually take this Koraidon off the field and now bring in the Flutter main that we saw hit the field at the very beginning of this game number 2, and hopefully it'll be around for a little bit longer as James still goes for another defensive play. The knockoff into the Flutter Mane is going to finish it off, but Gio gets to bring in the Scoridon for free, set back up this Sun, and give this Brute Bonnet a Photosynthesis defense boost. And the 4 as well. You're putting this Incineroar to sleep.
Sacrificing Flutter Mane, which I think makes a lot of sense at this point in the game. Flutter Mane is a really good late game option if you have that Focus Sash, right? Or if the Terra hasn't been committed on Koraidon, but it makes sense to give it up here. Now Koraidon gets to, as you mentioned, set up the Sun, and you've gotten to sleep off into the Incineroar, right? So there's still this mind game of like Sucker Punch plus close combat. I could go for that close combat. Koraidon tries to protect, trying to avoid another Sucker Punch right now.
It's not able to get it though, but the Brute Bonnet is going to go for a Rage Powder just to draw away any attention from the opposing Koraidon, as Geos gets to go for the Flame Charge to finish off. The opposition gets the speed boost that it had removed from itself after going back into its ball, and James now down to just his final 2 Pokemon, the Sleepy Incineroar and the Shadow Rider Calyrex.
I absolutely love that play because I think the main thing you're scared about right now is Calyrex switching in. Gio realizes, okay, if I give you an opportunity to stall another sleep turn, that's not great. I think that play may have just won him the World Championship. Now you've got a Koraidon that's faster than both of these Pokemon. And this is what I was saying, the Incineroar is cool, but it doesn't really do that much damage. It's because of its Dark typing to deal with that Shadow Rider. Koraidon does protect here, though, to start.
Gengar actually goes for the Encore. So this Brute Bonnet is going to be stuck going for Rage Powder for the rest of the couple of turns.
Okay, ends up being the Encore, of course. You could have locked into Sucker Punch. It is going to be that Rage Powder now. I think it's still fine for Gio because now you can just keep Rage Powdering.
It's going so close, but Brute Bonnet, of course, has to go for an Encore with that Rage Powder, and that will direct away anything from this Incineroar if it even survives this close combat, which of course it will not, because that is super effective. And Koraidon, that's going to be all it's able to do for the rest of this game. It's going to get knocked out to the Rocky Helmet recoil instead. So now it's up to the Shadow Rider Calyrex from James, the last bastion of hope for him into this game number 2 to tie it back up and bring himself back into this series.
This was an unbelievable comeback. Like, it felt like Gio just had the advantage, but James finds the position. Miss Brute Bonnet just fakes, and that's it. We're going to game 3.
A game 3 between 2 phenomenal players from the United States. James will decide who becomes the world champion at the 2025 Pokemon World Championships. And let's just run it back, Aaron. It's the same leads from games 1 and 2.
Not once, not twice, but 3 times, just like a Surging Strikes here.
The Incineroar, that's actually sometimes not a move he's decided to go for. Maybe looking at something like the Parting Shot a little bit better, but Gio actually is going to go ahead and save that Chi-Yu for later. It's going to be the Brute Bonnet that comes in, and a pretty defensive turn all around as that Flutter Mane is also going to go for the Protect. With the Brute Bonnet switching in, it means that that's going to be what has to eat the Fake Out, and Brute Bonnet isn't able to get the Sucker Punch damage onto Gio's Flutter Mane, or whatever decides to switch in. But we are going to see a Terrestrialization on this turn.
Oh, it's going to be onto the Flutter Mane. That, of course, is going to give it a nice little damage boost, and so this could be an absolutely huge turn. Giovanni could just get the knockout onto the Brute Bonnet and then put Incineroar to sleep.
Oh, there's
no Terra!
This Brute Bonnet is going to stay on Dark type, which means that this Moonblast is going to get a one-hit knockout. It is super effective, and Gio is able to get one Pokemon knockout right away in this game 3.
And there wasn't even a Sucker Punch, and it's knockoff in a Brute Bonnet. It's a disaster for James Evans here, as the Brute Bonnet now gets a Spore off as well. Oh my goodness, I was gonna say Gio there could have maybe protected the Flutter Mane, could have just gone for larger.
It's gonna be Koraidon that has to take that Brute Bonnet's place, but it doesn't want to be on the receiving end of a Moonblast either. James has preserved the Terrestrialization, so you are able to use that to try to take this Koraidon's negative energy away from it. But it's still a tough uphill battle. Too much damage from those boosted Shadow Balls, but we do see the Terrestrialization committed, and so it's going to be that Koraidon that does get rid of its Dragon typing, now becomes a full Fire type, and maybe that means we're going to see something like a Flame Charge or Flare Blitz. Really make sure that you're getting as much out of these Fire returns as possible, but Incineroar is going to be on the receiving end of an attack, as the Collision Course now will finish off this Brute Bonnet once and for all. It's been such a menace so far in these games, but that critical hit, that's got to sting.
Yeah, securing the knockout there onto Brute Bonnet. I mean, Brute Bonnet is actually very, very physically defensive on the opposing team, and so I think there's actually maybe a chance he could survive that without the critical hit. Gio is going to get a free switch in, and it's going to be into Chi-Yu.
Okay, so the Chi-Yu comes back out, and that's going to give a nice special defense drop to both this Koraidon as well as this Incineroar. Waking up, but it's totally still asleep. Koraidon now will go ahead and go for the Protect, and as we see the Flutter Mane go for the Shadow Ball into that slot, James is hoping this is going to be enough of a saving grace to actually let this Incineroar wake up, but the Heat Wave from this Chi-Yu will be able to connect onto both targets. Incineroar does take a pretty sizable amount of chip.
Oh, it doesn't wake up!
Incineroar stays asleep!
Right now feels like it's running away with the game.
Shadow Ball first from this Flutter Mane is going to go right in that Koraidon that protected on that last turn. This is a huge
Oh, I don't think it's gonna take it!
And the Chi-Yu goes for the Heat Wave to try to finish it off. A double KO! And Gio is one Pokemon away from becoming the world champion. Someone who has hunted for a major Pokemon title win in so many events previously, dating back to his time in the seniors division alongside James. And this could be the day he cements himself in Pokemon history.
This is his moment, and oh my goodness, he's staring down a full HP Flutter Mane and a Chi-Yu. Calyrex can get one Astral Barrage off, but it's not knocking out Chi-Yu.
And as it goes for the victory lap, this Flutter Mane brings this Calyrex down to its focus sash, and it's going to be the Chi-Yu looking at this final HP to deliver the finishing blow, and just like that, Giovanni Cischke is your 2025 Pokemon World Champion!
In an arena with over 5,000 live fans watching, unprecedented in Pokemon video game history. An arena that's crowned Olympic champions before. Gio now can call himself world champion, his very first tournament win, and what better way to do it than to win the world championships?